Any additions to the agenda? New business? 2017, $20,550. Any additions?
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Any more discussion? Citizen comments. We got a couple people here, Anna and Jill.
Jill?
And any more?
First of all, I want to say thank you for what you started over on the corner by me. Thank you, thank you. I have one question. Did the city pick up what was on the parking, or did he hire somebody to do that?
No, the city picked it up.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes. Yes. Anyway, I had a conversation with the man, and he wanted to know how long I was living there. I said, a long time. He said, well, I think I've met you before. And I said, well, yeah, I think I have. I haven't seen him there for years. So he comes and he cleans this up, and I tell him my sad story, like I told all you guys, that those trees by my house have got to come down. Yeah. I think he thought the trees that were on the ground had to come out. He got all that cleaned up. They mowed and they raked. And I said, the house needs to go. It's a hazard and it's bad. And he said, well, I got somebody to clean that house up. And I thought, he hasn't been here for years. He's not going to clean that house up. He stuffed some grass clippings in the hole where the skunks go in.
On the side of the house or in front of the house?
In front of the house, didn't do anything with the side on my side. I guess I'm here tonight. And he's got a for sale sign in the window. He said, somebody ought to buy this. I said, no one's going to buy this, the mess that it's in. So he's cleaned up what I guess he thinks he has cleaned up. Is there anything more that can be done to, that house is not safe to live in?
We filed. Let's see, we were here, 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
We filed a petition with the court requesting permission to go into the house, basically knock down the door. And he's got 21 days to respond, and that time is not yet run, but it's got to be on day 17 or 18.
But he hasn't responded. Okay.
So if he's in default, we'll just ask permission from the court for what's called an administrative warrant, for an administrative warrant given Chelsea and law enforcement and whomever to go in.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, because we just can't do it from outside of the house. But the claim is that everything you said about the condition, well, we can tell from the outside of the house that we have probable cause to believe the inside of the house is, basically can't get lived in.
I was pretty naive. The front door was open. I said, have you been in that house? Oh, yes.
He wasn't going to give you a tour.
I said, have you opened up the refrigerator? Yeah.
Well, I can enter the house because I was asked to take care of the place, or not take care of it, but watch over the place.
Recently.
Oh, years ago.
Okay.
Years ago when they first took over. So I can go in that house, and I've been in that house, and it is not livable. The food is still in the refrigerator that was there. Let's see, my daughter is 22.
And you said 15 years. You wanted to know how long Jim had been gone,
Yes.
my Jim. And it was 15 years ago he was talking to you on the fence when you started taking care of that yard.
Yeah. So anyways, the house is not livable. I mean, the roof is caving in.
It wasn't back then. You're saying the last time you were in it, it wasn't.
No.
Okay.
But when the people that lived there rented it, they left it a total mess, and they left in the middle of the night. And when they came, the last time they came, I proceeded to tell them.
Just to be kind of a smart ass, you better be careful. You might get some peanut from me to appear at the next court date.
That is perfectly fine. It doesn't bother me because I've been taking care of that yard for many, many years, and my kids too, and we have not been paid.
Okay.
I wish I would
And
have
your name
totaled
is?
Jill Simates.
Okay.
And she will be happy to go.
Oh, yeah.
But no,
Me too if I need to.
it's not safe to live in, and the skunks and the cats that are over there now are unreal. So,
I did walk around to see if he undid the latch that I guess you put on the garage.
We just took a 2x4
I
and
saw
screwed
what
the
you
doors
did.
shut.
It didn't look like it had been removed and looked in there.
Not when I was by either. We just pulled them up shut, put screws in them to hold the doors shut was all.
I was just wondering if he might have looked in there when he was here over the weekend.
We just have to go through the process, but
And
it's been
that's-
started.
That's good. I
So-
just want to thank you.
yeah, and I was just wondering, did he come in and talk to anybody yesterday, LaDonna or Jeff? Okay. I was just wondering, because he was in town yesterday for just a tad bit and made a U-turn and left, so. Anyways. So we wait till the 21 days is up and then we'll go from there.
Then it's the judge in this kind of case usually likes some kind of testimony on the record, so I probably need to go in there and have him make a record next day he's in court. And if that's the case, I'll probably call Chelsea and call you up, and that way if somebody yells at him for granting us access to the house, he's got a record to point to.
Yeah.
It will surprise me if they hired an attorney and they intend to dispute it. I mean, the easiest thing for them to call the city and say, yeah, we can go in,
Yeah. Right,
but they haven't done so.
right. And they've received all the letters.
Yeah, that's served. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to.
Very true. Well, I guess we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Andy.
You bet. Thank you.
Any other citizen comments? Okay, Ed Marks, evaluation City Wells.
Is that me? Oh, sorry.
Probably.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
You gotta pay attention.
Yes, sir. It's been a busy little while dealing with city wells and trees and guys being gone. But we collected quite a bit of information and put together quite a bit of information off of what we've done, and we've got several recommendations for the city to consider. So we'll get started. We were asked to look at evaluating the wells as far as the nitrate issues, and so that's what we did, and we're looking at the plant as well. One of the things that we've talked about in the past is nitrates and the effects, and there's some information out through EPA that talks about the cancer potential, and there's no weight evidence that indicates that there's a potential risk for cancer. They have talked about gastrointestinal issues, but all of the information that we have is that we have people eating extremely high nitrate, drinking extremely high nitrate fluids, and all over the world, and we're not seeing a rampant increase of cancer issues. Like one of the, and LaDonna, I'll send you this PowerPoint, so you'll have it as well. One of the concerns is children, and the comment they make here is the most likely exposure pathways for children are ingestion of contaminated drinking water and ingestion of food containing preservatives such as cured meats and hot dogs. In reality, that statement should say the most likely exposure pathways for children for high nitrates are ingestion of food containing preservatives such as cured meats, hot dogs, green leafy vegetables, fruit drinks, and in some cases contaminated drinking water. But they put contaminated drinking water as a first, and that's not the most likely source. But that's my opinion. So, to get on with what we're looking at as far as nitrates for the city of St. John, again, city of St. John north is up. Groundwater flow is coming in from the southwest, so we have potential sources here for well 6. Well 5 is in this area, and we have potential sources in this area, and those are the upgrading areas. The wells 7 and 8 is out here at the industrial park, so the potential sources, area sources would be to the southwest of that well, and at the city park, the potential sources would be to the southwest, the predominant potential sources. The other sources would be those sites and those potential sources that fall within that drawdown or cone depression for that well that would get pulled back to the well. So there's going to be some reach on these wells, especially in the summertime as they pump on. In wintertime where they don't operate very much, then we're not going to pull as much water back. We'll look at this as on a site-by-site basis as well. So this is a publication from the Kansas Geological Survey on Stafford and Barton County. And these are lines of equal groundwater elevation that they have in the aquifer. And one thing we know about groundwater flow is that it's perpendicular to the line of equal elevation. So just like land surface. As we've seen today, surface water runs off the high to the low. Groundwater runs from the elevation, higher elevation to the lower elevation, and it's perpendicular to those lines. As we get closer to the creek, those lines bend, and that groundwater flows towards the creek. That's the reason it's a gaining stream, and it gains water from the aquifer. One of the rules that we deal with in groundwater is the rule of V's, and if the rule of V's say that if the line of equal elevation points upstream, that is a gaining stream. It is gaining water from the aquifer. In other words, it's a drain. So it can also have impacts on groundwater flow conditions at times. The other thing we look at is nearby pumping wells. If there are any large capacity wells that would be pumping, then that can skew that groundwater flow regime. But without having the data to show that, we primarily just work off of what we have for publications that show groundwater flow predominantly to the northeast from the southwest across the city of St. John. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit to see a 10 or 15 degree deflection seasonally, spring to summer, or summer to fall. So just background information as far as where, of course, we're well 6, well 3, 7 and 8, and well 5. Well 2 is located down here at the co-op, and we did not spend any time on well 2 as there's not a pump in the well, is my understanding.
Power plant, you mean?
Yes. That's right, Jeff, there's no pump in the well?
I don't know whether there's a pump in it or not. They won't allow us to pump it. They've got it shut off and won't allow us to pump it. There may still be a pump in there. I don't know.
There is.
No. Well, they won't let you pump it to the system.
Right.
No, at all.
Okay.
No. And at this point in time, we have no way to discharge it other than that.
Okay.
So, because it's tied directly into the end of the system.
Oh, so we'd have to break the pump loose to even open
Yeah.
discharge it.
Yeah, or do something different as far as the load out and terminating the pipe to the east side of it in order to do it.
Well, that's something that should be explored, because there's some, and we'll talk about that later, there's some uses for high nitrate water that are non-potable uses, and we need to look at that, or the city needs to look at that. Again, the areas of contribution from the southwest to the northeast is where our potential sources of nitrates are going to come. And I don't know if we've got enough information from the co-op site. Well 5 is right here. This is southwest. It could be getting some influence off of the co-op site, but I don't have anything that directly indicates that.
The biggest concern against that probably would be the fact that the ground has been contaminated around there, and we've been treating that water for quite some time.
For the
state.
VOCs.
Yes.
Right.
So,
But-
and I've got a pretty good folder on it. I just haven't had the time to look through it yet. But there's quite a bit of information in there.
Do they test for nitrates?
I believe they do. I got a deal the other day from them. I haven't read through it yet. We get one every quarter.
Okay. And who does that work? Larson Associates?
Yes.
Okay. Well 5, southeast part of town. We had to do some work on this well to get it to operate. The check valve had failed, and so we had to retrofit the check valve to make it where we can run the well just for a short period of time, and the valve is closed off, so we're not getting any water into the system, and we're not getting any water out of the system to go back down the well. But it was determined at one point in time that the check valve was leaking, and it was bypassing water back down the well. One of the things that we noticed when we ran this well, it had quite a bit of vibration, and we pulled a set of time series samples off of it. And those samples, we had samples from March of 10 that were 10.4, 15 March of 10, 12 days later it was 6.89. And then this set of samples we took 1 minute, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, we were 12, 9, 13, 6, and 13, 5. So there is something in this immediate area around this well that is contributing nitrates to that well site. Could be farm ground, could be the neighbors with their fertilizer, possibly, depending upon how far back we pull. The vast majority of the contamination that we're seeing in these wells with regards to nitrates is going to be from fertilizer. We can do an N15 isotope study to determine that for sure, but that's the most likely source. When we look at nitrate contamination, we look at the most likely sources, and we think horses, not zebras. So fertilizer is the main component in this community that's going to be the biggest issue. We do see some cases where it's old septic systems, but more than likely this would test out as fertilizer derived. When we started the well up, we got quite a bit of rust and iron color out of the water. That's an indication that the well probably has some iron bacteria issues down hole. So that may be something that we need to look at, or the city needs to look at in the future as far as water quality and well performance. One of the things I did notice is the plumbing coming off that well. This is on the back side of the well picture that we were looking at before. This is a discharge pipe coming out of a pump base, and it's pretty well laid up. It's pretty well pitted, and the bulk of this, what we know about corrosion like this, is the pits inside are just as bad typically. So this is going to fail eventually, and my recommendation would be that it be replaced, along with some of the rest of the other piping, and probably looks like you're going to need a new meter. I think that's the original meter, and
We've got a new
obviously
meter.
the check
It went out there today. Yeah.
is shot. So the vibration issues are being addressed as well. That thing really got to shaking and a rocking and a rolling. But it's good, it's good. So one of the things that probably I'll look at is flow rates versus water quality in the future. Well 6 on the west side of town, the city has now their 100-foot sanitary easement. Originally the farm ground was within 26 feet of the well, and that is now sanitary easement and protected a little better. Well 4, which well 6 replaces, is in the building, and one of the things that we noticed with the sampling results is our upgradient wells. And if you look at we're going to get into should show you the diagram for well 5. Well 5 is constructed basically grouted down to 20 feet, and then it's sand and gravel to 76 feet. There doesn't appear to be any good clay layers in that formation at that location. Well 6, we put in piezometers, which are basically glorified monitoring wells that target specific zones in the aquifer. And if you look in your diagrams, you'll find a chart. Cross-section looks like this, and that is how the wells are positioned in relationship depth-wise to PWS 6. The deepest one is plugged. It was plugged. It was located in this area. It went to bedrock, and the original testing that was done on it showed low chlorides, and well, if it's low chlorides and low nitrates, we can use it. Well, we put the piezometer in and sampled it, and it was running 1,000 on fluoride, so that wasn't going to work. It was low in nitrates, but that we weren't going to be able to blend out that kind of salt. So we have then a intermediate monitoring well that's at the same depth as the production well, well 6. The screen is real similar to well 6. And then a shallow one that's, that one is only about 35 feet deep. This one is 82 feet deep. And PWS 6 is 81 feet deep. Or excuse me, yeah, 81 feet deep. So this one is screened real similar to 6, and this was in the very shallow part of the aquifer. And one of the things that we saw was that when this went in 11 or 10, we were 14.9 on nitrates, and this last go around in February this year we were 9. So this has shallow aquifer has cleaned up a little bit at this location, which is a good thing. The intermediate well, when it went in May of 10 was 3.8, and when we sampled it in February it was 4.83, so it went up about a point. The interesting thing that we have was that in May of 10, well 6 had been running for 12 days at 250 gallons a minute and was 7.25 milligrams per liter nitrate. And when we tested it in February this year, we were running 388 gallons a minute. First sample was 11, second was 12, and that was at 30 minutes. First sample was a minute and a half, 30 minutes was 12, and 60 minutes was 12.2. So those numbers are up, and they don't really correlate well with these. So it appears that we've got a contaminant that's fairly localized that is getting to well 6, and it may be coming through. We know there's some old test holes out here that may have not been plugged correctly, and we have well 4. That's the next page in that set of diagrams. And we know it was plugged on the inside, but it was only grouted down to about 20 feet. And actually, it had the mandatory 2 foot of cement from 18 to 20 feet, and then it was puddled clay above that, which is basically just cuttings that they put back down on the backside of the casing. And from there down, it's gravel packed to the bottom of the screen. So any confining clay layers that would be present at that site have been breached by the borehole. So any surface contaminant that gets down, the well itself could be the pathway. And we have a potential source right here with debris that's being swept up off the streets and stockpiled there. That should be removed. A lot of organic matter in there, and I have no idea how much four-legged manure it picks up off the street. So there's a potential source of contamination there that should be removed. And we also
But it's on the downside of it.
Yeah, but it's within the area of influence of well 6.
It could have been a problem all along. We've dumped it there for 40 years. It very well could have been a problem from the start.
And if that's the case, it's getting down and intersecting, being pulled towards 6. Once it hits the borehole in 4, it's going down.
Well, that's an easy fix.
So, how much of a problem that is, I don't know, but it is a potential problem. One of the things we can do, if you really want to know, once that gets pulled out and moved, we can push the cord and take soil samples and run them in and see what they are. We have 2 monitoring wells at that location also. The shallow one, 6.5S was broke and had a bunch of plant roots in it. Weren't able to sample it, so that needs to be repaired, and then it can be cleaned up and sampled. And the intermediate well, we have another well that's very similar depth to well 6, which is back behind me. If you're looking back behind you on that picture. When that went in, it was 8.6 in May, and in February it was 9.0. So we're not seeing a significant change, but we do have contamination deeper down in the aquifer at this site. And how it's gotten there, I don't know. I don't have that information. But it is considerably higher than the intermediate aquifer well on the upgradient side of well 6. And that was 4.8. So things to look at there. The other thing, I guess, would be a potential source, just like we saw at 6, would be the farm ground crowding well 4 also. That would be still a potential source. Be no different than crowding well 6. All right, moving on. Well 3, up in Brown Park, just north of the swimming pool. That well, we have very, very limited information on. Have no log for it, nothing. Did just receive some information from Jeff from Clark Well. That well has had a liner put in it. We do know it's screened from 52.5 feet to 76.5 feet. And it was originally a 16-inch casing and screen, and they put 10 3/4 in it. Put in 10 3/4 low carbon steel casing and cooked stainless steel screen on the bottom. And one of the concerns was the pumping rate, and that was a pretty good well. That thing pumped a lot of water.
Yeah.
And it's dropped off considerably. It was getting sand and gravel to start with, and then there's been some aeration issues in the past, and we have that again. We were doing the testing, we noticed we were getting air in the line from the well, so it's breaking suction, or we are dropping the water level significantly enough in the well that we're getting cascading water into the well itself and causing aeration problems in the water that's being produced. Yes, sir.
Is it variable speed?
Yes.
Yes, they all are.
All of them are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all are. So that's already been dialed down, and that has stopped.
It's probably had the most work done on it of any well we've got. Clark's spent a lot of time up there in the last 15 years. There's quite a few different.
And apparently has some water quality issues
Yes.
that I don't know if it's mineral or biological or both. We can do the testing and find out.
I talked to Rob yesterday, and they're going to try and get down pretty quick and pull some samples on you, and then we'll know kind of where the bacteria is at and that stuff.
Send those.
He did not say.
Did he say what samples they were going to test for?
He said they were going to check for bacteria, and they didn't say anything else.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. Well, as far as potential sources, obviously, the city is one of them. And this well is doing really good as far as nitrate goes. It's under 10 and has been consistently for quite some time. We did the test, similar test in January of 04, minute and 30 seconds, 6.16, 30 minutes at 7.02. And then March 10, we pulled a sample at 3 minutes and it was 4.05. February, we pulled a sample at 30 seconds of 7.5, and 30 minutes and 60 minutes, 8.4. So we're still up, but it is better than, it's still better than 10. So this is a well that can be utilized for blending with some of the other wells, but we do have obviously sources that need to be addressed. One of the things that I look at is here we've got a well that we're taking to the plant to pull all the fertilizer out, as much as out of it as we can, so we can send it back to the park to water in the fertilizer around the well. So there's some things we need to look at as far as how we manage that well and the water and the nutrient management at the park itself, and probably need to talk to our neighbors about how they fertilize as well. when the grass is so green it hurts your eyes, there's plenty. And we know that we can minimize the impact of nitrates into the aquifer by managing the nutrients on the green areas. The other thing that we can look at is taking that water directly from the well to the pool, and we'll talk about that later.
Or using the baseball well or the football well to water the Brown Park.
No, it comes through a meter, right off of the main.
Well, that's what I mean. Could you work a deal with the school and water, everybody get water off the irrigation well at the football field?
Hadn't thought about it, but we might be able
You're,
to. Same way
do
we
they have
do
a
the
permit
south
for that
one.
well? They're already to the point they require a permit because they're irrigating enough ground. And I don't know
I'll
if they
talk to
have
David about that.
For recreational?
Anything over 2 acres
For that much volume,
requires
anything over 2 acres.
turf grass. That requires a permit.
I know it doesn't have a meter on it. I know it doesn't.
Yeah.
No doubt about
But
it.
the baseball field doesn't have one. Or you said baseball comes through the meter?
Baseball comes to the meter. School's football field be the only one that
Right.
doesn't.
We've been successful using treatment plants as far as green plants for treating nitrate issues in the aquifer. Did some work at the city of Cunningham, and we dropped the nitrates in their well field about 2.5 milligrams per liter, just because of the choices they made as far as managing the nutrients on their football field. And it's made a dramatic impact, and so far it's saved them from having to put in a treatment plant. So, things to look at.
Had quite a visit today with Van East about changing the way that we fertilize our parks and not covering them up so much and doing it on a liquid basis instead of a dry basis. So,
Do they catch the clippings?
no, they don't.
They stay on. That's 25% of the nitrogen load back in the park.
I think the fact of how it was done last year, where we say over 90 parts of in last year on that park, I think is what we determined. Somewhere close.
It was quite a bit.
It's plenty hot.
Now that's not enough to completely satisfy turf grass, but depending upon what you have in the soil profile, until you start depleting that soil profile, that grass will do quite well.
Oh, yes.
But it's all part of the nutrient management issues.
Right.
Which is considerably cheaper than treatment. Again, well 3, so there's some things that could possibly happen there that would minimize the amount of water that goes to the treatment plant that would not have to be treated. Well 7 and 8, this is well 7 and this is well 8. These are the saltwater lagoons that come off the plant that eventually will have to be dealt with. We still have some monitoring wells at 7. There are no monitoring wells at 8, so we just sampled well 8. And when I met with the guys initially, they were operating both of these wells at the same time, and they were not designed to do that. That would have been over pumping the bottom into that aquifer, which is what we don't want to do. And I think that is reflected in the analysis. I hope that's what reflects in the analysis, and it should repair itself as we go back into normal operation. Again, to the southwest is going to be the nitrogen load, and originally the field here itself was a considerable source of nitrogen to the site. We sampled the monitoring well. This is the shallowest monitoring well on the site. This is an intermediate monitoring well. This 5-inch test well, it's inside the casing protector. This one had been damaged, repaired, so we got it cleaned up. There's a 5-inch test well inside this casing protector. Well 7 in the cage, and well 8 is in the cage behind it on the other side through that. The original work when the wells went in, this is this is the shallowest, this is the intermediate, and that's the 5-inch test well. So we're gonna look at it from a different angle. Looking to the southwest, the other one was looking to the northwest. That's the 5-inch test well. This is the shallow observation well. This is the deep observation well that is now plugged. That was plugged when the well went in. And then this is the intermediate observation well. When we were initially put those in, this well was running 4 to 5 milligrams per liter. And then when we tested at the end of the test pumping for, well, the test well 5, before the production well went in, it was 6.5. And that is screened from 70 to 80 feet. We've got gravel packed just above the screen a little bit, and it's grouted land surface, so we've got a good contaminant barrier in the borehole, so it's not going to be an issue. The deep observation well that's plugged was originally running 1.3 to 2. Test well 5, screened at the same interval, 100 to 115 feet, 1.5 to 2. And then we did a time series analysis through the pumping test, and we're running 1.2 to 1.5. And then when well 7 went in, caught a sample of 5 minutes, it was 1.84. 300 minutes is 1.68, and 470 minutes it was 1.69, and we sampled it in this year in February, we're 2. Test hole 2, which is the shallowest one, when it originally went in, nitrates in that shallow aquifer were 24 to 25. And what we're seeing now, and this is a mistake, that should be 12.3. It's corrected on your forms there, but I need to get it corrected here before I send that to you. That should be 12.3. That's a significant reduction of nitrates in 6 years at that site. So I know the city has a nitrogen management plan, nutrient management plan to a certain extent at that site, and that is leasing it to farmers that use low nitrogen use crops. Is that correct? Is my understanding, Jeff?
I don't know.
Okay.
I do not
So
know.
I know it's not been corn
No,
since the wells went in.
no.
So, and I talked with Mel early on, and my recommendation was we look at low nitrogen use crops. The other option would be putting in city was really serious about cleaning that up. We could put in a small capacity well and get a term permit and use that to irrigate grass at that site or whatever, and burn that up. And actually this could become, this site in reality, since the city owns it and can control it, this site in reality could become a future well site, high production well site, if we can use the field to eliminate the nitrogen in the aquifer and minimize the impacts at that site. Then basically we're using the plants to clean up the aquifer, and then that can become a really viable well site, potential well site.
Who's got that ground leased out there? Anybody remember?
Raymond Long.
The Raymond Long?
He was the last one that I know of.
Somebody's got a wheat crop out there.
I would say
He regular, I guess.
you should have check twice a year or once a year. How many years have you been here?
I think he's the
One
one making
and a half.
drill it week. I couldn't remember.
We might
I
check
can
on
go
it.
check.
Kind of went back and forth for a while between him and Sparrow.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's okay.
I'm not sure who's got it now, but I think you're right. I think it is Raymond.
So anyway, we've made tremendous headways in that shallow aquifer as far as it is improving water quality wise. This 5.2 and well 8, originally that was a test hole 200 feet to the northwest. It's running 1.5 to 2, 1.72 during the aquifer test on the test well, and then it was 5.21 when we sampled it the other day. And I'm hoping that is just because they were being pumped at the same time when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I think so.
So that should clean up. That's one of the things that we'll talk about in the recommendations for. for the system overall. So now we're in the plant. All this water comes to the plant. These are the vessels that they use to ionic exchange with salt water to pull the nitrates off, and then blend back in with a percentage of the water that's bypassed, and that goes to the 80,000 gallon storage tank on the north side of the building. This is a unit that's built by Hawk, and it is a continuous sampler. Every 90 seconds it cycles between different sources of water that it's testing. One source is what comes off the skid or the vessels, the big green tanks. The other source is what goes to town, and the other source is what's coming in as road water to the plant. So again, it is this unit here that does the testing. And as it picks up water, as it switches, there's a certain amount of water that's still remnant in there that it's going to be testing, and we'll look at that, and it shows up on the charts as a change in the line in the testing as it progresses. One of the concerns we have is all this orange brown piping. That's iron and or iron bacteria that's being deposited on those pipes, and it's coming from somewhere, and it's coming from the wells.
It was clear plastic when it was
It was
installed.
clear plastic when it was installed, exactly. It looked like this when it was installed. So there is an iron issue that is, if it is not affecting the plant, it's going to be affecting things eventually. And this is one of the things that I see when cities and rural water district gets plants, the wells become not neglected, but somewhat ignored for the simple fact, hey, we got a treatment plant, we can cure all of our ills and have good water going out of town, and KDHE does not require you to sample your wells as a result, which is, I think, is a terrible service
Oversight.
to the city. Because, case in point, I worked with a small city several years ago. They were running 12, 14 on some of their wells on nitrates and put in a treatment plant, and their treatment plant is now falling apart and is going to have to be replaced. And the engineer called and I said, well, what are the wells doing? He said, well, they don't know. They haven't sampled it. So they went out and sampled them. They're now twice of what they were before. So now their plant is having to work twice as hard to produce the same quality of water that they had. So their operational costs are going to go up considerably. So anyway, that little machine reads out to the little box up above, and this value is what's coming off the skid, 1.6 milligrams per liter nitrates. That's treated water that's coming off the skid of the vessels. And then that is being blended and with the water coming into the plant, and this is what's going out to town. That is the water that's in the storage tank that goes out to town. And this is the water coming into the plant, 8.3. 8.3 is 1.7 milligrams per liter into the nitrate level. And at this point in time, the city was bypassing 60%. The maximum they can bypass is 80%, and we had the operators bring that up to 75%. So they're bypassing 75% of that water. And that does fluctuate a little bit depending upon which wells are running. So we're bypassing 75% of the water, and we're treating 25% of the water through the skids. And the water going out of town is 6.7. It is my opinion, and there's people that would argue this point, it is my opinion that anything under 9.5 going to town is a waste of money. You're wasting dollars. You're wasting salt. You're wasting power. That's my opinion. You have a plant that should that, for some reason, you get a slug of nitrogen in and the alarm goes off, then all they have to do is just change the bypass quantity. They just reduce the amount of water that they bypass, and it'll come back into compliance within minutes. Getting a handle on how the plant operates, because they're learning. They've taught me a lot. I know they're learning. I know they're studying it. They're trying to figure stuff out. quite frankly, it's running. I'm impressed.
If we could bypass it all, we would, but they'll
Yeah,
only
we can't
allow us
shut it off.
80%.
We can't shut it off
So-
without a KDHE approval. And one of the things that I hope to be able to do is get you to the point where you can do that. If the city wants to go that route. This is the computer screen that shows up, and it tells us lots of different things. 582, is that 82?
62.
62 gallons a minute coming into the plant. We're bypassing 334, 228 gallon minutes going through the filters. Regen waste flow, it's not regenning at the time. Plant water coming in, raw water from the well fields coming in at 8.28, 1.66 coming off of the filters, and 5.65 going out to the tank. Now, these numbers will vary a little bit sometimes compared to that head, and the reason for that is the lag time. The lag time in that machine sampling and what shows up on when I took the picture on the head, it was at a different time than what was showing up. It was a different value than what was showing up here, and that's just simply a lag time. They read the same when they're in cycle. What's showing here is what's showing out there, because that's where this number comes from. It comes from that machine. So here's the water coming into the plant. A little over 9.49 on this particular run. This is a really cool setup. I like this. I don't care for how it displays. I think it could be easier to read and easier to see if they would change the background. That's old eyes.
We haven't been able to do that yet either. We've tried, but we haven't been able to do
Yeah,
that.
that's probably going to take a program change
Mhm.
to the outfit to put it in. So we're coming in, and then the machine cycles and it drops down and it starts testing the water coming off the skid. So there's a lag when it drops down and it's testing this. So now we're coming back up, and it's low nitrates coming off the skid, and all of a sudden it jumps because it's picking up water, or it jumps because it's changing from this water to the water going to town. And this is the water going to town. We're under 8 going to town. So we're still in compliance. So it's this tells the operators a lot at a shop, whether you've got significant changes coming in from the well field or significant changes in the plant. As long as it works. One of the things that we started looking at was the regen cycles. Those hadn't been tracked, and Jason's been now putting them on the calendar. In January, we regen 6 times. 3 the first week, 1 the third week, and 2 the fourth week of January. Went to 75% bypass, and we've got 3 regen cycles in February. And I looked today, and I think we're sitting right at 2 or 3 regen cycles in March. So this change right here is saving us money. Now, some of the water usage that the city deals with. Square, we use 5.6 million gallons of water on the square. That grass area is just slightly over an acre. In grass, that's almost 18 acre-feet of water per acre. Our corn growers are only allowed 1.5 acres maximum. There's a few that get almost 2 acre-feet. But what I don't know, and Jeff, we've talked about this, is how much of that water is bypassing the fountain? Is the fountain recirculating, or is that?
It recirculates. It has for years now.
Okay.
It's all going in the ground.
It's all going in the ground?
Yep, sure is.
Okay. So, that's interesting. Combined, on the parks and the pool, the city is pumping 10 million gallons of water, almost 11 million gallons of water, and those vessels regenerate every 300,000 gallons. It's costing the city 36 regen cycles to send water to parks and pool.
At a cost of
That's one thing we don't have a handle on because we don't know how many regen cycles the plant does in a year. And I don't know how much, and if we knew that, and you knew how much salt you were using, you'd know how much salt you were using on each regen cycle. And one of the other things we don't know is why it's 300,000. I'm assuming it's based off of water quality coming into the plant, and they were probably looking at 11 or 12. It may be possible that can go to 400,000 or
I'm
450,000.
gonna find out tomorrow, because the guys from EBH will be here at 8:30 in the morning.
Mike's coming up? Well, we're good.
Wanna come over? 8:30.
So, there's some things that we need to look at there. Brown Park, obviously we can pull that water off ahead of time. The pool, we can pull that water off ahead of time before going to the plant. Cornwell Park, need to look at possibly putting in a small production well there. That's gonna require our KDHE, or
It's already there, we're
DWR.
waiting on the well, waiting on the driller. It's already flagged.
Yeah, but it's gonna require a permit.
It's permitted. It's permitted through the county.
But it's gotta be permitted through DWR and GMB5. Because that's gonna require a water break.
I thought he'd already had it done, or the driller wouldn't be coming.
No, he's not required to do that. The city's required to do that.
We better get on that.
And do the same thing at the square.
Okay.
That, we look at those options. You're gonna have to jump through the hoops with GMD5 and DWR. I don't know that it will be a big problem because we can justify by not pumping that or the other ones. Basically, these numbers will come off of the other permits, okay? Or be tied to the other permits. And we may have to do, we may have to be able to demonstrate we can do a reduction in pumping rates on the existing wells,
Okay.
which won't be a problem.
No.
But we're gonna have to jump, the city's gonna have to jump through those hoops to make that happen.
Okay.
Sure. Sure seems like a lot of the square compared to Park.
We meter it. Yeah, we meter it.
That's 4 times.
Yep.
So one of the things we look at on the
4 times
wells,
mercury.
as far as contamination and how they operate, this is out of a new book that's out on corrosion. We helped edit, Mike Sneeders and Dr. John Sneeders and Tom Hannon with Johnson Screen, put this book together, and we talk about Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3 in the wells. And one of the things we look at is the near surface issues with the well, integrity of the casing itself, the well site, the building, if you will, the pad around it, the pedestal that the pump's on, because this is the first line of defense for contamination into the well itself. One of the guys I talked to, or one of the talks I gave in Wichita last week, we talked about what goes on at that wellhead, and I asked everybody, I said, who has a mouse-proof well house? And one guy put his hand up. And I said, well, you must have pitless units outside then, because I've never seen one. I mean, it would have to be an incredibly tight building to be mouse-proof. So, we've seen, you just can't imagine some of the well houses I've been in, when you have to open the door to let and wait for the ammonia to escape the building before you can go in. It's pretty bad. So that's one of the things we look at, and the city's in pretty good shape for the most part on those. But we also look at what's going on outside, around the building, around the well site. One of the things we look at in our evaluations is how well it's grouted, and obviously the wells the city has aren't grouted deep. They weren't required to be, and unfortunately, that is how we control water quality, is with drought on a lot of these wells, as we've been able to demonstrate with the monitoring wells and with well 7 and 8. Zone 2 is a portion of the well that's where it's really the active part. It's the part that's being aerated whenever the pump kicks on and the water level drops. So the casing becomes aerated. When you have low carbon steel casing, that's the part that starts the rest of the worst. So that becomes impacted. And we also aerate this portion of the water. So we look at oxidation reduction potentials and look at what impact that may have on the water quality coming in. If we get too high of we call it ORP, oxidation reduction potential, then we can start precipitating out minerals. The other thing it does is it starts feeding the bacteria as well. Most of the iron bacteria is an aerobic bacteria, or one that's has air or oxygen to it, versus what we typically find in the bottom of the well, which is anaerobic, or that does not have oxygen. We also, in surface water, we call that the dead zone in the lake. Okay. So we look at what goes on here. We also look at the corrosion potential between the low carbon steel casing and the stainless steel screen. Some of that can be galvanic corrosion. Some of that can be induced corrosion, microbially induced corrosion. It's also called MIC. And typically the culprit is iron bacteria. So one of the things that we look at, we pull those samples, we send in 2 samples, one on startup and one after an hour, and they do a fairly complete analysis. They will determine not only what type of bacteria, whether sulfate reducing bacteria or iron bacteria, but they'll also species of bacteria, which gives us an idea of how much slime forming bacteria we have, and some of the iron bacteria is a little harder to kill than others. So we look at that information to design how we clean up the wells. One of the important things that we look at on these pumping systems is how the pump is configured. This is a submersible pump that would have a pump at the top and a motor at the bottom, and because of where the position of the intake of that pump is, it is above the motor. The motor hangs on down below. Actually, this might be on the shaft. Either way, the intake of that, where the intake of that pump is, determines how we handle the bottom end of this well. If it's aligned to shaft turbine, then we typically put a tailpipe on the bottom of that, so that we're pulling from the very bottom of the well in zone 3. This becomes a dead zone. Anything that is below the intake of that pump does not move water. So when in this configuration, the only reason we're moving water from here to here is because it has to come through the slots. And once the first slot of that screen is given up all the water it can give up, then it moves to the second slot. And once the second slot is given all the water it gives up, it moves to the third slot. The pressure curve moves down through that screen interval. And then once the demand for that pump is met by the screens that will feed it, anything below that does not move water out of that well. So any bacteria that drops to the bottom goes anaerobic, and we start seeing H2S develop, we start seeing the sulfate reducing bacteria develop, we start seeing slime forming bacteria develop, and we also start seeing loss of production. So once that happens, then we get a significant drop in the pumping water level. Even though the water level outside in the aquifer may be high, we have, due to blockage and pluggage of the screen, we see an accelerated drawdown in the well, and we break suction and we start getting air in the pump. That's one of the methods of how we get air into the system. And that may be what's going on in that creek. I did not see that scenario on 5 or 6. So those wells are apparently do not have excessive drawdown where we're exposing the pump intake. One of the ways we fix that with submersibles is with a shroud. We put a shroud around above the pump, and what that does is it forces the water down to come in underneath. It comes past the motor, helps keep the motor cool as well, but it forces water out of the bottom of that well. And the pump intake is up here, so from wherever that pump intake is on down, we're not going to get water out of that well. But we do have a motor that sits down here and gets warm in the process. They'll actually get hot enough they'll shut off if we don't get enough water cooling go by that. But I've also seen these pumps come out whole, that they've gotten warm enough that they changed the chemistry in the bottom of the well, and they'll actually precipitate minerals on the pump because of the heat differential. Don't know that that's what's going on here, don't have that information. So, but that's one of the things we look at as far as water quality when we go into designing rehabilitation programs. The other thing that we strongly encourage is any time a pump comes out of a hole, you run a downhole video camera survey. Because it can be possible that you get in there and you get to looking and you find out that, oh, we've got enough problems here. We don't want to mess around too much inside that well. Or we start pulling in gravel pack, or we have a casing failure or a complete screen failure. We've worked with some of those where they ran them to complete failure. And we've basically got the pump out, the old pump out that had failed. We got a liner put in, knowing that they had just a limited amount of time to get new wells drilled, and all that liner was to protect the new pump, so that if the well did fail and we had complete failure on the casing or the screen and the gravel pack come in, it wouldn't lock the pump and hold it, and they'd be able to retrieve that new pump. Back to our plumbing issue at the plant, this is what the piping should look like all throughout the plant. This is what we're getting in some of it, and that is not good. That needs to be addressed, or you're going to have a issue with your vessels eventually, or issues going out to town with nitrogen problems, or not nitrogen, with iron problems. That will eventually start coming up. That's it as far as that goes. And as far as in the paperwork, I've got a whole list of recommendations. With regards to well 5, part of that's already being done. Replace the check valve, above ground piping because they're corroded. Evaluate and possibly replace the meter. Evaluate vibration issues in the motor, and I'm guessing that's been done as well, or going to be done. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. If the pump has to be pulled, then a downhole camera survey should be ran. Pump configuration and placement should maximize the use of all the screen and be set up to pull from the very bottom of the well. And that does two things. Keeps the bottom of the well fresh, and that also puts us down in the cleaner water. Okay? Theoretically cleaner water. The camera survey can be evaluated to develop a rehab or relining or replacement plan, depending upon what it finds, depending upon if you have to go that far. And one of the other things we can look at is the city can do is look at the pumping rates and what effect that has on the nitrogen values. And as we had discussed at other times, another option is looking at the deep well option, an additional well at that site for possible blending purposes. For well 6, recommendations obviously remove the street sweepings, repair and clean out observation well 6-5S and sample. Reduce the pumping rate at well 6 and monitor the quality. We know historically that improves. The plant doesn't have to have, the minimum is 300 gallons a minute coming into the plant. I understand the numbers right. 200 gallons?
I thought it was 200.
So 200 gallons. So what that does for the city is that gives you the opportunity to manage your wells and manage the pumping rates for the best quality of water, with the understanding that you now have an 80,000 gallon buffer storage tank on the north side of the plant. Before you just had a 50,000 gallon elevator tank here, that you didn't have the luxury of slowing the pumps down sometimes because you had a hard time keeping up. With that 80,000 gallon buffer, so if you're pumping 500 gallon a minute and you can slow it down to 250 gallon a minute, you just pump twice as long. And I don't know that 250 gallon a minute is a reasonable number going to the plant, but it may be 300 gallon a minute. So your run time is just longer. Essentially, instead of running, well, this morning I ran an hour and 20 minutes. The wells ran an hour and 20 minutes on the first cycle. So at 500 80 gallon a minute. So if you cut that in half to 270 gallon minutes, you're going to run 3 hours. You're not going to be able to work. Fire happens, welds come off, the motors get dialed up, shut 7 and 8 off, you don't need to run those, bring everything to the plant, bypass as much as you can, put the fire out, and we'll clean the system up afterwards. The rules kind of go out the door in fire situations. But that's all part of managing the plant and the well field.
If we drill 2 wells for them parks, it's gonna increase that considerably.
That's going to increase what considerably?
Or decrease considerably as to what we're dealing with here, as far as rating increase, or pumping rate.
Oh, sure. Yes, that's,
Just by drilling 2 little wells. Because we won't be doing anything with the parks.
that's right. That
Part of
comes
the
off
reason that
demand
square
of the
takes so
system.
much water is because of the trees. It takes a lot of water to keep them trees.
Oh, yeah, they're gonna use, these trees will use, big cottonwood on a hot windy day, nothing to use 1,000, 1,500 gallons a day.
Yeah.
Well, you've already got one in place, and if you can work with the school,
Yeah.
that problem will be
Yeah,
over.
it will be. It will be.
Pretty reasonable.
It will be cut down greatly. Yeah.
That's what, 10 million gallon a year
Well,
Combined.
combined?
yeah, combined it
between the
would
two?
be.
No, between all.
Well,
Between
it's
all
about
of them.
3 between the 2 parks, the other 5's over here. But that also gives us the option too, that we can water the ball diamond with that instead of city water, and that's one that we really never calculated because we don't put a lot of water on it, but we would if we had the option. You know, so I'm sure Nick would like it better if we did. But this one over here is by far going to be the worst one to try and tackle. But we also think that if we can cut the application of fertilizer down considerably, we can slow that water down too.
The pumping rate may go down 30%.
Well,
We've
you can only
detuned
slow
these
these
quite a
variable
little bit
frequency
over.
drives down so much.
Yeah.
You get below 50%,
You
you're
can't
gonna
go-
start having pump failure.
Yeah, you can't go below 50%, but we've adjusted since Ned started coming over. We've adjusted these considerably, and we found, you know, we can change the way that we pump this quite a little bit, and we've made it way more efficient the last 30 days than what it was. And like he said, we're all still learning. It's just kind of a game that we go through here to see from day to day what kind of consumption we got and where we're at. But and of course we're going to start into the time of the year where consumption gets higher. But I think we've kind of got a handle on, you know, if we can get this number 5 well straightened out and get some water back out of it, that's going to alleviate the others quite a little bit. But and Clark Well was here today, did some measuring, and we've had a new water meter back here for that well for about 2.5 years. I guess it's been laying in the same place till we loaded up all of that today. So, and they're going to rebuild that. It's got a piece of pipe that's corroded severely, and get that check valve on there, and then we can start pumping that well again. Find out. And at this point, Rob Sokin from Clark said they weren't real concerned about the vibration in that well, depending on how hard we pump it. But they will start monitoring it as soon as we can start pumping water out of it and see if it changes from there. So, but like Ned said, it's all in how you set the pumping rate coming out of it as to where the vibration's at too. It does get better and then it gets worse. So, you know, it's just going to have to be something we play with and just keep an eye on.
We're seeing more and more with variable frequency drives have been out for quite a while. What I'm seeing and what I think is happening is the cities that have had high pumping rates in the past and due to declines have put on variable frequency drives, and they lowered the turn rate, if you will, on those line shaft turbines. And I think they build harmonics in that shaft. I mean, that is a shaft that runs from the motor clear to the bottom, just like a drive line. And I think they build harmonics, and they start vibrating. And one of the pumps that come out of Lowell in northwest Kansas, they were running at about 50%. It was the which is the device in the middle of the column pipe that holds the bearing that keeps the line shaft in alignment. So they've completely got a couple of those. That's what I think they're doing. I might may just been completely wore out.
That well's been there a considerable amount of time.
So that's,
Not been pulled, I don't think, that I'm aware of.
yes, sir.
Did you have you had the total park water, that's an annual number,
Yes,
10 million something?
5 something in the square.
I mean, all the parks.
Yeah, that's
10
here.
million 766.
10,766.
So what is that compared to the total city water?
20%. Almost just under, about 19 something. It was just under 20%.
Square is 10%.
Yeah. Yeah. Shocked us. Don't think it didn't. We knew it was a lot. We didn't know it was that much.
Yeah, so your salt consumption's gonna go 20%.
Well, they said 40 regens, isn't that what we said?
Yeah.
35, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, since we refilled that salt, what's it been? 3 gen. But they were up, one of them was up over 200,000 when we filled the salt container, so it regen at 300. We've had 2 this month? 2 since we filled it?
2 or 3 this
After the middle of last month, I think 2 is all, which is not very many. And 2 of those were fairly high.
Okay,
So-
let's continue here.
Okay. So on well 3, I think we've covered well 5. Well 3, we've reduced the pumping rate already. To stop the pumping the air, I'd rather you pump sand than air because it's harder on the pumps, actually. Evaluate the rehab or replacement options. You've got enough age on this well and enough things that have happened down the hole. It may rehab one more time without any trouble at all, but the city really needs to start looking at setting aside some money for a replacement there, would be my guess. If you decide to go rehab, then there's that package of analysis that we typically deal with, works really well if you want to go that route. They're not cheap, that's $1,000 set. But it's very informative. Before anything's done, my recommendation is they pull the pump and do a downhole camera survey before they decide any kind of treatment. Because if there's already holes developed, any of that treatment process can make that worse and maybe start pulling in gravel back. So I've seen these where had they gone in with the standard treatment and they outrun the camera survey and gone in with the standard treatment, they would have collapsed the wells. Between the camera survey and the lab analysis, we make an informed decision on what treatment options to have. And then, as I said before, we need to look at, the city needs to look at getting ready for a well replacement project. 7 and 8, as I said before, they were running together and they're not designed to run that way, and that's been changed. I'd recommend that we still sample the nearby observation wells quarterly to monitor what changes are being made in the aquifer that may be seasonal changes. And that would be through that airlifting process. And the guys have the equipment to do that. They know how to do it. I don't know that I have to babysit that. They can, I'm not saying they need babysitting or babysat, but they can pull those samples. One of the things that I'm looking at is if you can maintain your nitrate levels below 10 milligrams per liter without using 7 and 8, then just pump them an hour a day to keep them fresh and turn them off. There's no sense pumping those wells unless you need them. That's my opinion. But they need to be pumped. They don't want to leave them set out because that's when we start building problems down there. Well, too, as I said, we didn't collect any sample. Needs to be evaluated and see if water can be utilized. Nothing else. You've got that ground down there that can be irrigated. You're going to up your mowing costs, but you've got a bunch of grass down there that can be used as a opportunity to get rid of a bunch of nitrogen out of the groundwater. On all the wells, I suggest that they start monitoring the water levels. Especially this summer, it wouldn't hurt to do that weekly. You can get both pumping or static as long as we know how long the pump's been running when it's a pumping sample or how long the well's been off when it's a static sample. And they should be sampled at least after every 30 minutes or after they've ran for 30 minutes. And That gives us a good sample coming out of the aquifer, not just startup. The city has a test kit, and I think it needs to be calibrated. I visited with Jason today, and we looked at it some more. We couldn't get consistent numbers off of it.
He told
I
me
don't
this
know if it
afternoon
needs
it's still not right.
to be- Needs to be sent back to Hawk and have them look at it.
Yeah.
He's doing everything that I saw he's doing it right.
That's what he
It's
said,
just
and every time you did it, you come up with a different
different
answer.
number. And we've got a known control
Mhm.
bottle of tin nitrate water from Hawk. So we've got that, and it just wasn't consistent. So I think once that's done, the city has to test kit sample wells weekly and start building a database. And then monthly, I think the city ought to collect samples and send them to the lab. And that way you get two things. You get a check on your nitrate test kit verification, and then you start building a database that says, when the time comes, if we can shut this plant off, you'll add the data, take the KDHE that says, look, here's a year's worth of data, or here's 2 years worth of data. And if the first year we're not seeing significant changes, that could go to quarterly samples. But here's 1 or 2 years worth of data that says we can manage our well field and minimize the usage of this plant. I don't know that you necessarily get rid of it, but if there's a way that it can be mothballed effectively and still be utilized as when needed, then that may be something to look at. As every ton of salt that goes out to those lagoons, the city's going to deal with eventually someday. And that is industrial waste, and you will go to an industrial waste facility to get rid of it. It'll go to cavern storage or a class 1 disposal well somewhere. And if they should have a leak and get into the aquifer, then you will be building an oil reverse osmosis plant. Pull that salt out of the ground.
And that salt costs $36 to get rid of it, a ton.
A ton? Okay. I have a pretty definite opinion on containment. There's only 2 kinds. Those that leak and those that haven't been good. And then Megan knows what's underground storage tank, above ground water tank. She still has to do maintenance on above ground water tank. So monitoring those wells would be important. Source water protection plans, we've essentially done that at wells 7 and 8 on your own, and are minimizing the amount of fertilizer that's going there, and we know that appears to be working. There are some opportunities through some federal programs that this farm ground that's within 2,000 feet of a public water supply can automatically go into Conservation Reserve Program. And that may be an option that the landowners bring your neighbors in, talk to them. If they say no, then we need to at least make them aware that we're having a nitrate problem, and anything that they can do to reduce that nitrogen load would be helpful. I recommend a training workshop be put together for the operators, and those providers could be EBH, Field Tech from Lane Christensen out of the Wichita office, Pat McCool and Angela Burtzar with Kansas Rural Water. They're retired engineers, retired KDHE engineers. And they work for Kansas Rural Water, which you pay into and you don't have to pay them. And then, and myself if need be. Parks and non-potable supply usage, and we've already pretty well discussed that. We could put a well in here at the square, take a small footprint rig that they're out there. I'd have to be careful we don't tear up sidewalk, but small footprint rig, they get too crazy, I think it can be done. Again, it's going to take a permitting process.
And I talked to Carl a while back, and I told him we were gonna get together and try and do that in the next, hopefully before summer gets real hot and you don't get real busy, and hopefully we can sit down and get some kind of a game plan we can do there, and then we'll approach him and see. Carl's son.
Or
Yeah. So.
yeah, one of the things we're seeing with EWR is this they understand the issues that the city has, and if we can demonstrate that we're not going to cause problems by adding wells, they've been very receptive to permitting some of this stuff.
Well, we felt like too, that number 2 well, the south well down there that's high in nitrates, that there are, along with irrigation, we could also go to setting up some kind of a deal where we could load bulk water that way too, out of there and get it away from the way it is now. The treated water goes into those trucks. And there's some repair that definitely needs to be done on that well anyway, but if we could separate water out of there, high nitrate water out there, then that's just another way to take that high nitrate water off the top of the aquifer and get rid of it, because it's not gonna hurt, an oil well, it's not gonna hurt a cow if you load it for cow water, so. And we sell close to 500,000 gallons a year out there, so it's a good place to do that too. So there are some options. And before that, we looked at even trying to get it over into that South Park before we come up with a deal with Ryan on that deal down there. So we do have some options, and we're trying to catch all angles and see what we can do that'll be the most cost effective. Try and get this down where we don't have to treat it. So
You don't have another line under the railroad anymore.
the only one we got is the one that's under Broadway.
Man, putting a line under the railroad is
And it's an act of Congress to get it done. It really is.
extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
You have one, the 51 water line.
Yeah, that goes to the,
Yeah, but
that goes
We
to,
could move the meter on the other side.
well, we could. Yeah, we never thought about
It's like a
that.
3 or 4.
I mean, if we, the only water that there's no consumption of water south of the railroad tracks except for the power plant. I mean,
Anybody
nobody
got
else.
any questions for Ned?
Fire plug, so, anyway, there's
It's
a lot
Raymond
of
Long
options.
that rents that. He has it until 2019.
Who is?
Raymond Long, and
I
it's
thought-
exempt corn.
Yeah.
It's excluding corn.
Does he pay us?
Where's that from?
Ned, you got anything else? We're running pretty long time.
We are.
That's what the Don
I didn't
said.
say anything, I just saying.
This is all ironic. I'm getting text messages. There's water in my basement.
Oh, you better be going.
Maybe you're done for the night.
Got any questions for Ned, anybody? Ned, you got anything else? Okay, let's
I can
move
have to let me
on.
know if
Appreciate you coming and sharing that bit of information, and the council, I'm sure, will be in touch.
hate to disrupt your
Yeah. You need to go?
No, she'll
John, do you need to go?
no, she'll handle
Well,
it.
excuse
It's
you.
just a little bit.
Okay.
Could be a lot, but right now it's just a little bit.
Consent agenda,
That's what you're on.
that's where I'm on. Approve the minutes, regular council meeting March 21st, special council meeting April 3rd. Appropriation ordinance 4/4/2017, $84,891.73. Need a motion.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion, second by Marshall. All in favor? 5-0. Department heads, grant administrator Lisa's not here.
No, so your tennis court will get tabled until next meeting.
Okay, we're gonna do that, okay. Police chief, Chief Sailor, he wants a 5-minute executive session, non-elected personnel to discuss employee performance.
Do you want the attorney?
To include. Yep.
If he wants to be in there, yeah.
Everybody, Jeff?
No, just
Council,
council,
mayor,
mayor, and city attorney,
city attorney.
and city clerk.
That's it, vote.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Who made the motion?
I did.
Grant, Bryant, and Marshall. All in favor? All opposed? 5-0.
Now they're in the city limits.
So moved.
Second.
Marshall makes motion, Bryant seconds it. Any more discussion? All in favor? All opposed? 4-0, and Sherry abstains. Okay.
Okay, and then, also, Grant has been sending me pictures, and I gave you guys like a little kind of PowerPoint kind of thing about people that still aren't following the solid waste ordinance. Really, there is no penalty in the solid waste ordinance, so we really don't have any recourse. Grant has said that he is not going to pick up these people because they're not following, so I'm just throwing it out there so you guys can see the pictures, you can see what addresses they are, in case somebody comes and tells you guys or asks you guys. Or to see if you guys want to add a penalty to the solid waste ordinance.
There's a penalty. I mean, there's a general penalty for any violations in the book. I'll tell you, it's not more than 1,000. So there is, but there. I mean, if somebody was like, okay, I'm gonna, what's the penalty if I do this? If I go to the solid waste section, they're not gonna find one. Or there's a general penalty for violating any city ordinance. So you could take them all to court.
I mean, some of them appear like they're in trash cans.
They're just not
They're just
They're
not
just
in
not in
his.
his.
And they're not in his, and they don't have a lid.
fly free or whatever they call it.
Correct. So I'm just passing the information down the chain.
Why didn't he just make the big note stuff on there that it's not good enough for their compliance?
Works for me.
I mean, I can tell that them two are anywhere near compliant.
Right.
Yeah, there's a couple of them there.
Right.
You know, that almost looks like cardboard, though, I can't tell.
No.
Hard to tell any of this picture what it actually is.
The majority of
Can't
them
really tell
are,
whether that has a lid on it or not.
right, the majority of them aren't using as totes. That's the majority of them. I don't know.
But I would say 7 people out of 800 is,
I don't know why they're not using the totes. I love my totes.
I mean,
have
that's starting to
3
get a
of
little
them.
nitpicky. if you ask me.
exactly.
So I was just letting you guys know, in case these people come up and ask you, now you know why he's not picking them up.
You have a
Because you got
simple
pictures.
explanation, just tell them, put it in a tote.
Put it in the tote.
If they all
Put the
got
lid on
totes,
it.
Everybody should have gotten a tote by
If
now.
they
Everybody
didn't
has
get
a
a tote,
tote.
well,
Yep.
then they need to tell somebody so we can give them a tote.
The next thing is that the Amy Clausing and her flag team has approached us about a fundraising idea where there's not very many addresses on houses in St. John. And so what she would like to do is take spray paint and go with the form and go ask the people for $5. We'll spray it on the curb, the address on the curb, donates to the flag team.
They used to do that all the time.
And just to see, she just wants to make sure it's okay. I didn't think there'd be a big problem with it. Then the next question would be, for those that didn't do it, I'm just throwing it out there to see if the city would want to pay for those, but I would just do it on a donation basis. That's what I would do. So they're all geared up, ready to do it. They're going to do it in blue. I know, so you'll just be stuck.
And on your front door.
And
Stick it right on your, we're going to put it right on your shed for you.
I don't have a problem, if council want to make a donation or something to.
Why don't we wait and see how many they get?
Yeah,
and
well,
go
that's
from
what I
there?
told her. I
that's a good idea.
said, just wait and see. They're planning on doing it like 2 weekends. And so if you see them around, that's what they're doing.
Tell them
That's
to have that.
all I,
Get anything else? Jeff,
I don't really have anything at all.
attorney, gone. Nothing. Old business, we're gonna
Table.
table that grant tennis courts because we sitting here.
Yeah.
Anything under new business?
yeah, we got
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, we do.
you got
I wanted to
one.
bring it up real quick on the old Methodist church,
Old Methodist Church, okay.
because I believe the city had to go remove another window out of it because it was falling out.
That was last Friday.
Correct.
There's a busted one down low, not clear through, but there's 14 windows completely out of that place. And they bought it for $35. I don't think they had a clue what they were buying, but I'm sure there's probably water sitting inside of it, and eventually it's
yeah.
gonna turn into mold and everything else.
We think we know why they bought it.
Well, according to resources at the courthouse, they said that they're going to strip it down and let it go back to the tax sale. So they're going to strip everything out of it that they can to make money, and then it's going to go back to the tax
Just
sale.
like everybody before me has.
Wow.
That's exactly what I got.
They
told.
also bought several other properties.
They did.
I so moved to move forward with the
I mean, I think we need to do that, or just tell them
The only issue is I have to figure out whether the sale has been final.
it's been finalized.
The sheriff has signed all the sheriff's
It's all
deeds.
been signed.
Okay,
Because I picked mine up.
let's sort this out a little bit. When we condemn that, is that gonna fall back on her, is it still gonna be,
She's
or is it
gonna
gonna
walk
fall
away.
on the city?
She's gonna walk away from it, it's gonna go on the property tax rolls, and then, I mean, and candidly, when Chief said something about that, it kinda shocked me, because if that's the case, and they're just removing things from houses, and I don't know that to be the truth, then you're just gonna have a bunch of property in the city that's got to be torn down, and I don't know what you can do to stop it. I've been thinking about it ever since he said it. And if they bought it, it's theirs. They start taking up copper and wiring and woodwork and everything else.
Yeah, sure.
Derek
Not
Sharon Grove.
Derek
Derek
Wentz.
Wentz.
But that's Sharon Grove's son.
Sharon Groves' son.
And she has apartments on First, and she bought a house on Monroe and
For,
First.
Two properties at that auction,
yeah, she bought one
somewhere else.
South Prairie. Well, they bought 3. I don't know. They bought like 5 properties total.
What would they sell it? If they bought it for 35, would they sell it for 70 to the city? Make 100% profit? Save.
Why do we want
Well,
it?
I don't know. if
Because
we
that's
really
gonna
want it,
save
but
you a
here's
lot
the
more
thing.
money than
At some
you-
point in time, we're gonna have to do something with it. And maybe it'd be rally up the good boys in St. John that have the big equipment to tear it down.
The mayor and I have discussed that at length, and that's
I
what
mean,
we think
talk
too.
to Chad Fisher, talk to the people that got high loaders and dump trucks and.
They're not gonna have
tear it
any
down
property insurance on there. Somebody's gonna go in there and get hurt.
We talked about blocking the street off for 6 months and shoving it in.
There's
I don't
one.
think there's a good answer to it,
There's
whatever
an
we
old
do.
church or schoolhouse, I'm trying to think, over by, off of 61, the road that goes to into Rice County, and the city just directed a fence, barbed wire around it to keep people out of it. Cheapest way to handle it.
Man told me a long time ago that there was no value in the brick there unless you grind it through a rock crusher, because the brick was all done with concrete instead of mortar, so there was no salvage value hardly at all to the brick either. He said you could probably clean 3 out of a dozen maybe if you're lucky. The rest of them will break, you know. So basically what you got is alley material if you run it through a rock crusher. Plus everything else that's inside of it is not a lot of value there, I don't think.
Definitely needs to be left on the agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's move that down to old business and be sure and keep it on there. I mean, it's something that I'm not against, and I have talked to Jeff, and I have talked, I think, to Marshall, and I think the only way I see it is we get some people together and block the streets off and put her on the ground. I mean, and I don't know whether it'll be expense to it or not, I don't know.
Do we still have people trespassing in there?
Huh?
Do we still have anybody trespassing in there, Chief?
We haven't seen anything or had any issues for quite some time.
Okay.
But I suggest we go ahead and move on.
Yeah, definitely.
You want me
Any
to
other questions?
just write them a letter to start saying,
That's fine.
Yeah, get it going, let's get it started.
Let's get it nipped in the bud before it gets, if they go in and take all of anything that's got any salvage value out of it, we're just, you know, we might crip back a little bit out of something,
And I can get you
like
the legal.
copper, or, you know, might make us something back. Anything else on Old Methodist Church? Executive session, I need a motion for a 20-minute executive session to discuss prior job interview and possible hire.
We need 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we're gonna need 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Return back at 9:01.
To include everybody here except for Adam.
Second.
Okay, perfect, that's exactly how I wrote it.
No motion in a second. All in favor?
Yeah.
All opposed? 5 and 0.